Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the...
Hello, and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. I'm Rivka Rivera, and today Frank had a family emergency, so won't be joining me for the topical, but I have a special guest with me. You may remember her from our Barbie podcast, very, very heated episode, filmmaker Jessie Conweiler. Hey, Jessie.
Was I invited back or was I forced? We'll never know.
I thought this was great because we were planning on talking about the 81st Golden Globes, which happened on January 7th, and the Emmys are tonight. And actually, Jessie and I, we were having a conversation earlier about transformations in our relationships to the industry and just a lot of feelings about career and art and
Gatekeepers,
capitalism. And I was thinking it would be really great to share this convo on this topical with our audience because it's so much of what we talk about. So did you watch the Golden Globes, Jessie?
So, Rivka, great question. First of all, you look beautiful. I love the Golden Globes. The Globes, the Oscars, like as much as I love to shit on them and am excited to do that today, they are also my Super Bowl and attendance is mandatory. I watch the entire thing and I love them. So it's a very love-hate relationship with award shows and Hollywood in general.
In general, I agree. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about them if there wasn't a love for them and a fascination
It's like Barbie,
for them.
you know?
Yeah, totally. And I do think this comes up all the time. If you criticize something, does it mean you can't love it? Is critique inherently a form of dislike or hatred? Which if you listen to this show, you know I don't think so at all. I think it's a form of wanting to understand something that you love so much at its core and maybe transform your relationship with it.
Wait, did you watch?
No, I've slowly stopped watching. I guess that's part of what happens when you do start to really look at something and you're like, it just doesn't fully do it for me anymore. I think also like, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about, what I'm interested in is identifying the things that it fulfilled as a child and like what are the ways that we as artists can, if we're not already, fulfill those on our own. And I think as I've developed my artistic circle and just been more engaged and more recovered as a creative and been more creative in my life, the need for those from awards show is less. There was a need to like see it and be a part of it and see who wins. And, you know, if I want to wear a dress and look hot and get great pictures, it's so much more accessible. I'm like, cool, I'll put on a great dress and get one of my friends to take photos of me.
Right.
Or if it's that I need to be in community with other great creatives and say, hey, I love your film. But the idea that there's a best is already, I've done a lot of work to already dispel that illusion anyways. And I think we've all kind of collectively realized like it's so silly. I don't think I know anyone who actually believes the best actor is the best actor or even believes that like it was fairly voted on and there wasn't an entire campaign with lots of money behind that person being pushed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like the shittier things get, the more that I really rely on like my rituals and like having fantasy and having, you know, enjoying the spectacle of it all. I think for me, maybe I'm just compartmentalizing and it's not healthy, but for me, I just remember watching it with my mom. I'm like texting with my mom and my sister. Oh my God, his dress sucks. Like that's the kind of stuff I love. And I totally hear you, you know, about the bullshit of it all. But I also think about, you know, Divine Randolph Joy won. And I just think for somebody like her, it's like, well, this is going to like, hopefully change her life. And she's going to be able to get more roles and be able to tell more stories like that. And so I don't think it's black and white, like everything. I do still think maybe it's naive, but I do still think there is some good socialist principles hidden way deep in all the Botox of the evening.
Yeah, and I think that's the question. Can we identify those values and can we give them to ourselves?
It's just a party. It's just a boring party.
Exactly like you're saying, the principle of being like, can we celebrate amazing work that's not getting attention ordinarily and hope that that extends beyond one individual, which I don't think this system. I don't think award show does. I think if anything we saw with Barbie, there's an illusion that it's going to be all women making movies because Greta Gerwig tore that glass ceiling down, and you're like, the numbers are saying absolutely not.
Only to be then just like trolled by that terrible joke about Barbie was about movies or whatever. I mean, there's so much to what you just said. I feel like, first of all, I remember meeting somebody who had an Oscar. Relax. It was a composer. It wasn't Brad Pitt. And I asked him, like, how long did it make you happy for? And he like really thought about it. And he was like, 2 days. And I always love thinking about that story because it's like, you know, the fantasy and, oh my God, if I could just get there, I could just be in that room. And it's like, even if you get there, it's 2 days of happiness, if that. And I think also just this idea that are winners only winners because there's losers is obviously a very inherently capitalist idea. But it was interesting after the monologue and everything, like the Barbie of it all, I was saying to my boyfriend the next day, I was like, was Barbie good? Because I was like wanting to stick up for Barbie. And so like, just because of that terrible monologue and it just like really not getting the awards and not getting the love and just being kind of seen as like Oppenheimer is the real cinema and Barbie is the girl movie. And I was like, wait. And I was like, no, it was an ad. Barbie wasn't it for me. But at the same time, it's like when somebody insults your mom and you're like, I can say my mom's a bitch, but like, fuck you, do not come for my mom. That's how I felt. I felt protective of Barbie.
I guess I'm just done. It's like, we were talking about this earlier. It's like, it's becoming more and more of a fuckboy, these awards shows, which is kind of freeing. Like, maybe I can get what I want from it, which is look at the outfits and partake in whatever, but not actually give it the weight and be able to move away and be like, cool, if I want to have some sort of feeling about like creative wholeness, it's never going to come from this. And maybe I'm there one day, maybe I'm not, but like it's never going to be something that needs to fulfill us. And what do we need as independent creators? And can we create that for each other?
Totally. And I think there's a grief almost in being like, you know, like when you are breaking up with the fuckboy and you're like, he's got all these issues. And it's like, you have to break up with the shitty guy. You're still kind of sad. Like, I kind of feel that way about like old Hollywood and the changing of the guard and how it's like the system, you know, having gone through this strike this summer and being like, oh my God, like the system is crumbling. Streaming broke the business. It was never a super moral business, but it was a working business model where a lot of people were able to make a living. Streaming came in and really broke the business, and now it's kind of shattered. And the good thing about the bottom falling out is that we all get to kind of be like, oh, we're our own saviors. We're our own gatekeepers. Like, nothing is stopping you from making content. I can't believe I just said content. Shoot me. But you know what I mean? It's grieving the dream because that's no longer something that you need to chase. You can just spend your energy actually making your art.
I just want to bring up another tweet that I thought was interesting about the words from El Norte Recuerda. Oppenheimer, Ernst Burkhart, William Hale, Napoleon. Enough with the morally complicated colonizer origin stories. Like, yes, that was generally that. Like, not even going to see Napoleon. Like, what? It's true. I'm like, why?
Why is Napoleon? Yeah. So it's obviously, what is it? It's like, it feels like when times of progress. I went and saw Luna Luna this week. Do you know Luna Luna? Have you heard of that? So I'll just tell you really quick. Mm-mm. It was this art exhibit that was started in the 80s by this like total performance artist visionary in Germany. And he was like, I'm going to get all of the contemporary modern artists and I'm going to make a circus, an art circus. And like it's all going to be for kids and everyone can come. It's going to be experimental. So like Basquiat, Keith Haring, Dali, like so many incredible artists all came together and made this thing. And we were so excited to go. I was like, oh my God, we're going to ride all the rides and do all this stuff. And it was like, girl, I mean, it had been hidden for like 40 years. And we're like, why has this been like hidden? Like what happened? And I finally, of course, I'm like always talking to people that work there. They're like, oh, well, when everybody died, all their Keith Haring Foundation, everybody's foundation, it became like all about the money. So they're like, we're not going to let our artist who is now dead and super popular and a fucking cash cow, we're not going to let him be part of this collective thing. But it was such a like,
oh, wow.
It was inspiring, but it was also just like what they had done to the exhibit. It was just such an Instagrammable. It was all just like having the Instagram moment. And you literally had to pay more to go like to the Salvador Dali like selfie. And like, it was just fucking crazy. The commercialization of it. Yeah, it just had me thinking a lot about like how we consume art now and like taking the power back, you know, like really just making it for us and our friends. And like art should be cheap. Art is not a luxury. Art is a necessity. You know, the one thing we can do is take back this evil fucking technology. We can use it to make our shit.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to yoga.
Okay, and thank you so much, Jessie, for coming on for our topical conversation. Before we go to our full episode, I want to give a shout out to Julianne S. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Julianne's a listener and a multimedia artist who documents and explores internal apocalypses, the fragility of personal relationships, and the necessity of creative expression for collective growth. You can find her work at foottoface.com. I'm shouting her out because for Christmas, she sent Frank and I t-shirts that are screen printed by hand. And on the back, it says, "All the best to you and may all the fascists fucking die." And on the front, there's this amazing guillotine. And Julianne, they're so cool. It's my favorite. I wear it to the gym. It's my favorite shirt, and I wear it out, but it's really fun lifting weights at the gym. Thank you, Julianne. That was so generous. And you can find all of her work and all of her awesome t-shirts at foottoface.com. I also want to share that this podcast is produced by the two of us. We perform all of the necessary labor to make this show happen. And as we are trying to practice our anti-capitalist values, we don't sell ads on this show. Instead, we rely completely on community support to keep the show going. So if you're able to support us, please consider subscribing to our Patreon. For just $5 a month, you get access to our entire back catalog of premium episodes, and you'll be directly supporting this show. You can also leave us a one-time contribution in our tip jar, and you can find all of those links in the episode description in your podcast player or by going to mvcpod.com. You can also help us out for free by leaving a rating and review for this show on your podcast app. It takes 2 seconds, and it's super helpful in boosting the algorithm and getting this show in front of more people, and we really appreciate it. Okay, we'll be right back with filmmakers Ryan Dickie and Abigail Horton to discuss their film, Blow Up My Life.
Today we are joined by Ryan Dickie and Abigail Horton. Ryan and Abigail have a long history of filmmaking collaboration. They've each directed short films that have played at festivals including South by Southwest and Fantastic Fest, won 2 Cannes Young Director Awards, and were selected as one of Filmmaker Magazine's 25 New Faces of Independent Film. Blow Up My Life is their debut feature film, which premiered at Austin Film Festival in 2022, won Best Film at Harlem International Film Festival, and is now available to stream on demand. And personally, they met on the set of the 2014 Cannes Director Fortnight film Blue Ruin and have been blissfully married since 2017. Ryan and Abigail, thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Oh yeah, we're so excited. This is the first time that we're getting the chance to speak with, up-and-coming filmmakers about a film that they, in fact, made. So Rivka and I are extremely excited. I guess just for the listeners, the two of you reached out to us to maybe talk about this film. I'm curious, how did you find us?
Well, I subscribed to the Lever newsletter even before it changed its name to the Lever. It was something else before that. I can't remember.
Oh, back in the Daily Poster days?
Yeah, back in the day. And then they kind of started advertising this podcast, and I was like, hell yeah.
What a perfect place to
And
discuss
so I was
our...
like, honestly, I really thought it was kind of a long shot, but I was like, I'm just going to try because like we would love to talk with you guys about, just pursuits of anti-capitalism messaging and ideas in art and filmmaking, which is what your podcast does. So I just thought, hey, maybe they'll have us on, and we're so excited that you're having us.
Yeah, it's a perfect pairing because when you reached out, you self-identified this film as being anti-capitalist. So I have many questions about what the creation of that looked like. But let's jump in. We are talking about your feature film, Blow Up My Life, written and directed by both of you, Ryan and Abby, starring Jason Selvig, Kara Young, Devram Stiefler, Ben Horner, and Rima Sampet. And the synopsis for this, we're going to try not to give too much away because it is out on demand now. So we want folks to go and watch this film. When disgraced pharmaceutical employee Jason accidentally discovers a deadly corporate conspiracy at his former company, he and his cousin Charlie are forced to go on the run as they attempt to expose the crime before the rich, evil business people find them and kill them.
A tale as old as time. So usually we give a little bit of historical context for when the film that we're talking about was released. As we mentioned, it came out in 2022. I think anyone listening to this probably remembers what 2022 was like. So rather than giving specific historical context, here's some statistics about the U.S. pharmaceutical industry and the opioid epidemic. The U.S. pharmaceutical industry is the largest in the world, making up about 40% of worldwide drug development, manufacturing, and revenue generation. The U.S. is the world's largest exporter of pharmaceuticals, accounting for nearly 1/3 of all pharma exports. The U.S. pharmaceutical industry generated $550 billion in revenue in 2021. Prescription drugs in the United States are over 2.5 times more expensive than those in other countries. Almost 70% of Americans take at least one prescription drug. In 2021, there were roughly 107,000 drug overdose deaths in the U.S., and over 75% of those were opioid overdoses. And the number of drug overdose deaths in the U.S. increased more than 16% from 2020 to 2021. Yeah.
Wow.
Devastating.
Yeah,
To say the
truly,
least.
truly devastating. So the first thing we ask our guest is usually, why did you choose this film for us to watch? But love getting to ask filmmakers this question. What was the inspiration for the two of you to write and direct this film?
This topic of the opioids and pharmaceutical industry and stuff has been important to me personally. I've lost some loved ones in my life to opioids and to drug overdoses, and it's something that I've addressed in some of my previous work, kind of looking at it more from the people suffering from addiction, but wanted to kind of approach it this time from someone who's on the inside, kind of waking up to their complicity to the issue and really wanting to explore, what does it take for someone to make a change in their life? You can see, maybe you get some information that, like, oh, maybe what I'm doing isn't like all for good. Maybe my intentions are good, but at what point it's like, the classic, like, the path to hell is paved by good intentions. And Jason's kind of like riding that path a little bit, sort of, willfully ignorant perhaps to like, how it's all happening. And so we really wanted to explore, like, can people change? Will people change? What does it take for them to change? And, hopefully, get people thinking about like not only this system, but in the pharmaceutical company, but hopefully the metaphor kind of expands to capitalism sort of in general. It's not just about one product or one thing. It's kind of about how capitalism will sell you the disease and the cure over and over and over again. Yep. And that's how the system sort of propagates. So that was kind of the starting point.
And I will say too, like, to add on to what Ryan said, we wrote this in May of 2020. So of course, during, the beginning of COVID, when we were kind of watching all our systems, our global capitalist system just completely collapse and like our healthcare system fail in some catastrophic ways. And I think we've both always been fascinated. Kind of the opioid epidemic is kind of this like weirdly perfect example of how our system fails so deeply, yet works exactly how it's intended to. And so it's always just been this kind of like almost just this perfect specimen to study, to say this is working exactly how it's supposed to, and look at how fucked up this is. And so by creating a Friends of Pharmaceuticals, who has this opioid, it's actually an opioid addiction recovery drug, within the film, we were kind of still playing on this idea that, well, what's the best way for a pharmaceutical company to make money is to get you coming back for its product, and how evil and cruel that is when it's something like opioids.
Yeah. And especially when it's under the assumption that it's to help people. But of course, when you put, any company within the system is always made for profit, then that is going to be the number one priority, not actually people's health and well-being.
And it's just, especially when you look at the opioid epidemic, it's just so fucking fucking clear and obvious. And so it's always just been something that we're like, we need to talk about this all the time, right? Like, this is insane.
I love how you used the vape pen for that
Thank you.
medicine, because it's exactly what you're saying. It also just mirrored this idea that vape pens were created to stop people from smoking, and then they become their own addictive product. And how many products like that we see on the market consistently. The wellness industry is like a whole industry where there's just a ton of sickness, and that's all due to capitalism. So it was also just a great cinematic device. I love the scene where what is Jason's boss's name?
Gary.
Yes. So in that scene where we're discovering along with Jason that they know people are getting addicted to the vape pen, and actually that he's been using it for his own sciatica. I love the device with the vape pen there, and just he's sucking on because we all kind of know how addictive that is and how easy it is to harness that addiction. I just thought it was a great device, as opposed to it just being another pill or another drug. Cinematically, I think you told the story so well there.
Thank you so much. We also were really into this idea of the pen kind of connecting up with an app, and this promise that, apps can solve all our problems in the privacy of our own homes felt really like in the moment or like of the moment, that like, oh, we should just all, go back into our homes and do things privately and recover without community. That felt like a really something that is probably going to exist pretty soon.
And it just it just always goes around the core issue. It's just another Band-Aid.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, if we just get the tech a little bit better, then then it's going to solve it. But again, it's just Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids.
And then eventually, maybe I won't give it away. There's a great twist at the end that adds on to that.
I really enjoyed that specific tech element because it was just like such a simple like plot device choice, but it was so representative of all of these things that we're talking about how, like, what does the healthcare industry call it now? Like value-based care or whatever shit with like data-driven care, whatever bullshit that they're using to basically say like, we're in the business of, taking care of people, but really we're in the business of crunching fucking numbers.
Yeah.
So like the simplicity of it's an opioid, it's a drug to get people off of opioids, connected to your app, connected to your phone, connected to the vape. I was like, this encapsulates so many problems in such a simple little like plot choice. So I really, really enjoyed that aspect of what the story was built around.
Thank you. So glad we, it's like almost like every industry got their little say in how that fictional device was created.
I'm curious. One of the really strong elements that I enjoyed was the depiction of like this finance bro culture, or I guess it's like in this film, it's like these pharma hustler bros. I'm curious, have either of you worked in like a corporate workplace? Do you have any experience with like that type of, I don't know, like just like gross finance bro?
No, but I'm just upset. I'm obsessed with it.
I have a little bit, not in the tech side. I've done a lot of commercial stuff, kind of gigging for corporate gigs and things like that. And actually, someone a close person to me did work in medical equipment sales for a little bit, and ended up basically kind of having a crisis of conscience and ended up like becoming, a yoga instructor and went off the grid.
Damn.
So that also was kind of a little bit part of the inspiration for this too, was, and that person was working, not even to this level. It was on, very, very kind of like simple, equipment, but just the fact that, they go to these retreats and go to these, it's like they've been depicted in so many other, like recent series like Dope Sick and things like that, where they have these, sort of like sponsored speaker events, but they're just like excuses to get, everyone drunk and
raves.
Didn't have a good time. Yeah, this is like a farmer rave basically. And, everyone's just like looking to hook up and then go to the next one rather than, necessarily like really breaking down what should be done and what can be done and how can we really improve things. It's just kind of, it's so transactional, just kind of like the rest of it. So that played into our thought for sure.
What's super disturbing thinking about the intersection of technology here is like what your film shows is, you know, potentially someone can have a conscience and maybe break the cycle and do something. But what these companies want to do is eventually just incorporate AI into all these jobs where you think like, God, you know, when you're like debt collectors and all these jobs that are like considerably, you're like, how does somebody do that? And we know under capitalism they do it because they freaking have to.
No choice, yeah.
To survive, there's no choice. But if AI replaces that, there is no conscience. You are just, they're coming after you no matter what. There's no human, you know, when you're like having the conversation on the phone. And what does that mean in the medical industry when you're talking through your medical bills, or when you're just trying to be seen and heard in an already corrupt industry? It's almost like we're in a moment of like a last hope until it completely falls apart.
This is a really optimistic episode.
It's true. And I mean, and even like, you know, we have some, you know, friends and stuff that are doctors, and, you know, have been telling us that, you know, they have a very, very strict amount of time that they're allowed to spend with their patients before they have to go to the next one. And no matter how much it might benefit the patient to sit there and really listen to their problems and get a full, you know, examination of things, they got to move on. And if they don't make their numbers, then, you know, they get kicked out too. And so again, with AI and things like that, where it's just, you know, more mindful service to these, you know, to the stockholders, basically shareholders. It's a bleak outlook for sure on the industry.
Your film also, it had such I love the tone. It was definitely satirical, but thriller, very funny, very much a dark comedy. I'm curious. I mean, it was clear to me what films it brought to mind, but what were films that you were thinking about watching as you prepared to make this one?
Oh, great question. And I'm glad that the tonal aspects, you enjoyed that. Yeah, we definitely did want to make sure it wasn't too sad or depressing. Like, we want to make entertaining films that you want to watch and enjoy watching and have fun, while at the same time sneaking in our rage here and there. But films that inspired us for this were, the
Coen brothers, definitely, you know. Done so much great stuff tonally, where, you know, they'll take a very serious subject and, you know, inject a lot of entertainment in it. And, you know, like Abby's saying, you know, like we didn't want to make like an essay film, you know, again, series like Dope Sick and things like that. We knew we didn't want to make something that was like about the Sackler family or something like that. Not only that has that been done, but the scope of that is, you know, on another level. And we had our own kind of thing we wanted to do. But we also love watching movies like them, and we love Burn After Reading and, you know, Big Lebowski and things like that. But then, you know, there's a lot of great kind of like 80s and 90s thrillers that are kind of in the same vein. I mean,
Enemy of the State
was
a big one.
The Firm and The Net and Fletch and stuff like that. Jason's performance, definitely, you know, some Chevy Chase inspiration from Fletch for sure. You know, someone that's kind of like in over their head too. I think what brought the comedy to my, you know, the darkness of the subject matter, I think starts to become kind of funny when you think about someone who's like inside and then is trying to shift gears and then
but has no idea how to live that life.
Yeah, has no idea, is totally out of their depth, and then starts making mistakes. And then once mistakes starts happening, then they make more mistakes and bigger mistakes. And that kind of comedy of errors is just, you know, it's just funny. And I think it also helps to keep the tension taut, you know, when you've got a scene of serious things and you can kind of break it with something comedy and then disarm the audience a bit and then kind of shift again, and then we're back into something a bit more serious. I think, you know, you can kind of get things a little bit more palatable almost that way too. Put a little spinach in the popcorn, so to speak.
No, I think that's such a smart way to present sort of like what are in like very depressing ideas, and like a story that could, like you're saying, like the Dope Six, any story about addiction, which are very heavy subject matter, but like punctuating it with this like sort of like absurdist comedy. Yeah, it doesn't make it feel didactic or like you're lecturing people. It feels like it has its own momentum that pushes the film along, which I really enjoyed. So for a lot of our listeners, probably don't have a large amount of insight into the nitty gritty of how a fucking movie gets made. So, and I know that it's different for every production, you know, depending on resources, time, whatever. But I'm curious for you too. So you've finished the screenplay and you're like, we want to make this a movie. Can you just like walk us through what do the next steps look like, especially for, you know, I'm assuming the two of you aren't, you know, multi-millionaires, so it's not a question of simply, you know, like what's the budget for this movie? $15 million. Daddy's got it. So
Yeah.
So what does that look like for like an indie film like the two of you have produced?
Well, it was kind of a special case because we did shoot it. We wrote it and produced it and shot it during like peak COVID, pre-vaccine. So that was insane. But
Oh wow, yeah.
We worked together. We moved out of New York into my parents' house and wrote the script for 3 months, kind of with this goal of like either we're shooting in October, or we're not filming this at all, because of COVID, needing to be outside before it got too cold. So we wrote it for 3 months and gave ourselves 6 weeks to prep this with our producer Alicia.
Damn.
And
that's a very fast. That's a very fast amount of time. Yeah.
And it was such an interesting kind of indie filmmaking exercise. And like, we knew it was October. We knew we were in Middletown. We knew we had a certain amount of resources. Because of COVID, we had to quarantine a lot of, you know, our whole cast and crew. So that really cut down on our resources again. So we were really kind of writing backwards to all these inhibitors that we had. So, you know, how many people could be in a scene at once? We only had 9 people on our crew because we just couldn't quarantine any more than that. So it was a very specific and special experience, I think, producing this film.
And as far as the funding goes, I mean, we basically each put in what we would normally put in to make a short film, essentially. And then that little bit of money helped us attract a little bit more money. You know, from some small, you know, friends, family, small investors, little things. And we basically barely got enough to get through just the production, the shoot. And then once we got through that, then we had to raise more money for all of the post-production. And then once we got through that, then we had to raise more money for the distribution. So that came in phases as well. But
you just have faith it's all going to work
out. Yeah, but you do. You just have to, I mean, just keep thinking that it's all going to come together. I mean, and again, the COVID stuff, I mean, we had no safety net. You know, if someone got sick during the production, it would have shut down and it would have become a short film. And, you know, it was a major risk, and film production is always, you know, very stressful and always tight of limitations. And, you know, this initial idea, you know, I started kind of outlining it back in like 2017, and I was thinking about it on a bit more of like almost like an international scale, maybe more like Indiana Jones or like, you know, David Fincher level kind of thing.
Yeah, just jet setting all over the globe.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Because again, and this is kind of, you know, this is a global issue. So it ended up kind of, you know, in dreaming about it, it felt natural for it to go that way. But then, of course, when we decided to make it, you know, out in the suburbs, you know, we scaled it all down. But then I think after making it, we realized like, wow, well, isn't it great that this didn't cost $100 million to make? Like, wouldn't it be great if movies didn't cost so much money, like, and didn't require so many resources? And something else that was really, really important to us was also to facilitate this production by giving our cast and crew all equity in the film too, which is nearly unheard of. But something that we really, you know, felt strongly about, and we felt that all of our team deserved, certainly. And, you know, not only that, but it helped bring everyone together and feel like we were all contributing to this. And because they are, especially because we, you know, it was only 9 of us. You know, everybody was bringing so much to the table, wearing multiple hats, you know, fully going summer camp mode, you know, staying at, you know, Abby's parents' house and this one other house that we had rented out for the shoot. And so, it was great. And it was a great bonding experience with everyone during this time when everyone didn't want to be in New York. They're sick of being, holed up in New York. We could bring them out, into a little bit of nature and give everyone, something to kind of work towards. And it was really, really satisfying and fulfilling. And certainly by the time we wrapped, our wrap party was lit. Everyone was so excited, just
it
to
gave
be
the
able
farmer
to.
raves something.
Yeah, exactly. We would put them to
something compete
shame.
with.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that equity piece amongst your cast and crew because that's really important. And we get a lot of questions on this podcast about how do you, what are alternatives to filmmaking that aren't your corporate structure, the way that people know Hollywood. Actually, I want to ask this question that was asked to us on our recent mailbag episode. We had a listener who asked us specifically, they have an aspiration to create entertainment in the future, and they wanted to know, do you really think Hollywood can move away from business moguls? They feel that David Zaslav is responsible for the decline of modern cinema. And is it possible for creatives to take control of the industry soon? So given that you sort of started this alternative model, and I think this would probably parlay into a discussion about how you're distributing this, I want to know how it sounds like your politics really affected how you were creating this. It doesn't seem like you stumbled upon this concept of equity, that you must have had some concept of it. And so, talk a little bit about that.
Well, at the time, it was actually kind of funny. I had been working on this little newsletter with some people I had volunteered on the Bernie campaign with, and I was researching what collectives are. I was like, oh, what's this? Never heard of that. And so me and Ryan would just go on walks being like, is that even, you can't do that in movies. You can't have any kind of shared ownership of anything. And we talked about it a lot and kind of decided not to completely revolutionize the movie making system with this film, but we did want to figure out how could we make sure that our cast and crew had a piece of this. And so that was really interesting, just, learning about new systems of economics and then trying to apply it to what is generally a very leadership, producer or director and producer led pursuit. And I think because of it, in a lot of ways, it does need a vision to guide a shoot and to edit a film. I don't think having 20 people directing and editing a film would be a good idea. But that's not to say we can't recognize the work and the physical labor and the danger people put themselves in to make films.
And I would imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that as an actor myself, if on top of getting paid to be, work for hire, you're there to do your job. And certainly if you really love your character and the work, you're giving into it. But there's this unfair, unspoken expectation that you should sort of give, like you were saying, the summer camp vibes or this with indie filmmaking. There's so much that you give. I would imagine if I'm getting equity in a piece, then I'm really there. I'm really present in a different way. Did you find that structure changed life on set?
I will say they were a bunch of amazing friends that were on our film.
Yeah.
So I don't know if with, back end points for indie film, if that's really gonna be something that people I'm gonna make a ton of money after this. It's an indie film.
Yeah,
let's be
of
realistic.
course. But I mean,
But I think it's
them.
appreciated. Yeah. I totally think so. People have been like, that never happened to me before. No one's ever given me this. And so that felt really good. And I felt like not only is it just something to say, yeah, you deserve this, but also it's we're just friends together making a piece of art. Why, let's be kind. Not that kindness should guide how our system,
Sure.
sort of. But it did just feel right because these were people that we love that were, taking a huge risk to come out and do this with us. So it was important.
But I think you're right. Kindness is really crucial. And I've been on so many sets where the concept of kindness is we're going to be kind in how we interact and maybe talk, but the actual
The resources.
maybe the resources are unkind. You know what I mean? There's a double, and you have to so often be but everyone's talking kind, and yet there's not enough. I'm not being offered food, or I'm being expected to do overtime, and it's chill because we're all friends.
Right.
So I think it's important that there's a structural kindness there too.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I really kind of dislike this, like, oh, let's just be kind to each other. Let's be nice. I'm like, I will be nice when I don't have to pay like $2,000 a month for my health care, Yeah. Like, I don't
Sure.
like, I would like something else besides kindness. Of course, like, I want everyone to be nice to each other. But, I'm always like, are we just saying this? Come on. Like, let's back it up. Back it up with something.
No, there are absolutely correct moments for righteous anger. Like when you get on a film set and you see that craft services is basically non-existent. That's a time to get angry.
Food is everything.
Absolutely
Food is
everything.
everything.
I mean,
It's fucking everything.
And that was a really important thing to us too, is having, because again, it was a summer camp thing. So we, after our days, and we always did 12-hour days,
Which is insane, but
more.
that's film.
That's
Sure.
Which is kind of a it sounds like a lot, but that's sort of, I guess, the standard. And just to be clear too, we did give equity as well as a day rate for everyone too.
Yes.
Not just equity.
Sure.
But the food on top of that, we all had dinner together, and after that, and it was just like making everyone feel like this was, again, a group effort, a team effort. We're in it together. We're looking after each other, and like we're all striving for the common goal of like making the best thing we can, and for all of us to, feel good about it, and be inspired by it, and like take this stuff, these processes and these kind of like, this mentality into, our future projects. So we hope that carries on for sure.
All right, so you write the film, you produce the film, you bring these people together, you raise money for post-production, which for any of our listeners, that's like the editing, the audio mixing, the color correction, all of the things that go into the final aspects that make the movie really, pop. And then next comes distribution. And you mentioned in your email that you self-distributed this film. And again, for the listener, there are a lot of different avenues for film production, ranging anywhere from a big Hollywood studio to an indie production. And those are pretty, amorphic in that like a film can get produced, but the channels for distribution are fairly fixed in that there are only, several large distribution companies that have access to, if you're going to be doing a theatrical run, like putting movies in theaters, or if it's online, it's really just the Amazons, the Netflixes or whatever. So tell us about how self-distribution works.
Yeah, that was
Twas a journey.
Twas a journey is a whole new kind of like landscape for us, because we've made a lot of short films before, and essentially short films, you can finish them and put them online and say, wow, that was great, and okay, on to the next one. But there's no real marketplace per se for short films. But with a feature, you can make money from it, and because you've likely spent so much money, you definitely want to pay back, recoup the money that you've made, or at least attempt to. And on top of that, you want to try and make it as accessible as possible to your audience. So we premiered at Austin Film Festival, which was great. And, we ended up getting, about a half a dozen offers from different distribution companies, and
we were just shocked at how little films are valued.
Yes.
Like
shocked. It's
like,
shocking.
Insane.
And that value has only declined.
Yes.
Over the years. And, we were getting these offers, and then we're talking, reaching out to our fellow filmmakers and being like, who we knew had also made deals or gotten offers from these companies. We're like, oh my God, can you believe this terrible deal? And they're like, yeah, that's the same deal that I took. And we're like, this isn't just our film. You don't think our film is just, stupid or bad or whatever, or unvaluable, but this is like the standard rates of today.
So like essentially companies, and these aren't giant companies, but they're ones that, put out movies.
Prominent enough, certainly.
They'll give you maybe $5,000 and then take 40% of everything.
For 15 years, most of the time.
Jesus.
And then they also have to recoup all their marketing.
$5,000?
If that. So
honestly, most of the offers we got were no money up front.
But we'll still take 40%. So we were just kind of like, is this a joke? Like, am I in a dystopia? And it's hard. It's gonna be, there's so many movies that are made. But because there's so few places to exhibit your films now, because theatrical isn't as popular, because there are these 5 platforms you can go on, it's gotten kind of smaller areas of like, where can an indie film be seen? So there's then like less kind of options for where to put them and less people who want them. And so we were just like, this seems insane. Why we've written, produced, filmed, edited, completed a film. Why are we handing over to someone else to do the bare minimum to put it on iTunes? And I think there's kind of like a little mini revolution going on with a lot of filmmakers going, wait, yeah, what? I'm not going to do that either. So we did talk to a lot of people who are doing this self-distribution, because then you make all the money yourself. You're not paying someone to like write one email for you or like post on social media for you when you could have done it yourself.
And we were in the unique position because we did produce and semi-finance this ourselves. We had control to take these deals or not take these deals. And even further back, to give our crew equity or not. If we would have sold this script to Netflix or something, or to a distributor, from the beginning, they would have made all those decisions for us, and we wouldn't have had any say in how the money split up or any of that kind of thing. So again, we found ourselves in this place where like, we don't have to take these deals. Everyone is going to pressure us and tell us. And some people even told us, oh, you don't need a lawyer to look at this contract. Just sign it. No big deal.
They were scammy.
And meanwhile, they were going to end up charging us interest on the advance that they were going to give us. Things like that. It's absolutely predatory.
It's a notoriously, like, ask
stuff.
any filmmaker or producer, it's a notoriously predatory part of filmmaking is distribution.
Dark.
I'm sorry.
And it's like, we're lucky that this is a time where some of these tools, like doing your own ad buys on Instagram or whatever, or on YouTube, or actually putting your film on, let's say Vimeo, or on the iTunes store, the Amazon store.
You can do things.
You can do that yourself. You can pay and whatever. But usually we can now use the same tools that these distributors are using anyway, but we're just not handing them over the keys to let them drive and again take 30% off the top.
Yeah. Well, they don't totally own the means of production in that sense anymore. And I think you're right. It's going to keep opening up, especially like, even you said, I'm like, yeah, you could just get AI to do all that busy work that they're probably just using AI to do anyways. Like, it is cool. You said revolutionary, and it does feel like that, and it does feel like from the conversations we've had with listeners and different people in the industry, like everyone's like, there's a different way, right?
Exactly.
Because this seems crazy.
I'm thinking the same thing right now. I mean, I don't know nearly enough about the distribution industry itself, but it feels like there's space for some sort of like collective distribution model that doesn't exist yet, that like especially for indie filmmakers. You two should do that.
Some people are definitely exploring things like that right now, and there's been a couple of amazing articles that
the ideas are floating around for sure.
And this last year the people are exposing some of the numbers also about films that have self-distributed compared to ones that have been taken over by distributors, and the profit margins are crazy. And it's something like 84% of distributed films don't break even.
Damn.
Like, what a crazy number is that? But then it's something like 50% of self-distributed films do break even.
So there's there's some hope.
Wow.
So it's extremely tough competition now, more than ever too, because there's also more films being made now than ever. So to find, a place in the spotlight for yourself to get your thing out there is more difficult. And so, that's also the ammo that these distribution companies will try and hit you with. It's like, oh, we've got the access to whatever, we'll get you that New York Times review or whatever.
I don't know.
But it's all a crapshoot.
I think we've become fairly passionate about this topic in the last year, because if you can't get your movie out there, if people are taking your profit of your movie, if they're burying your film, you can't then go make another film. You can't have a lifetime of creating art. Filmmakers don't have a path forward where they can really empower themselves. And so it's just been like a fascinating exploration of like kind of how films are taken out of the hands of the people that create them. And so that other people make money off of them, instead of the people who just want to make the next film and the next film and are just trying to create something for everyone to enjoy. So it's just been an eye-opening, fascinating time. And it feels like I feel like almost now I'm like more obsessed with the business side of filmmaking, but I think it's been really important to learn about it and to figure out, if like if we do want to make films for our lives, if this is like the career path you want, I'm happy that I've learned about it, because I definitely feel like I can make better decisions, going forward.
I think too, like you're saying, if you start really convincing yourself that, you've got to pass your idea through a gatekeeper to get it made and bring it to the next stage, you're always going to be censoring your ideas into what you think is going to get sold. And then
which I feel like we are seeing a lot.
And that's, a lot what's happening with, the content and the algorithm. So I think there's like some liberation in thinking like, well, if I have this idea that people are not going to find popular,
I know I can self-distribute it. I know I can get it out.
I can find some way through, and get it made. And like, unfortunately, films are so reliant on money and resources more so than, like any other art form, maybe other than video games or something, so it's tough to begin with. But then if you add these layers of gatekeepers and things like that, it starts to get, again, very bleak in what you think can get made, and then what type of filmmaker you're then, kind of like forced to be or something like that. And we strongly reject that. We want to, unleash the art, so to speak, or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that goes straight to your anti-capitalist values right there. And I'm super inspired and impressed by that and excited by where this takes you and where this makes sort of like a movement in filmmaking.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also love that sentiment that you just articulated, Ryan, because Rivka and I, we went to theater school. We both worked Rivka still does, but in the entertainment industry, actor, writers, and it's a very discouraging, creativity stifling industry at times. Yeah. And my last question was going to be like, how do you keep optimistic in the face of the business of Hollywood? But it sounds like what you're saying is like, we're just going to do what the fuck we want, and then we'll figure out how to get people to see it at the end. And like, for me, that's kind of where I finally arrived with the way that I create stuff, is like, I'm no longer adhering to the business, and I will just do stuff for me. So it sounds like that's where you two are at. So that's kudos.
Thanks. I think it's still trying to figure out how do you make a sustainable life of that,
Sure.
But I think people are starting to talk about it, and the conversations are happening on how can this change. So I think I think there's some good things ahead.
Yeah,
definitely. I'm curious, did you two go to film school? If you did, would you recommend it? Given, I don't know, Frank and I have this conversation a lot, just in the sense, I feel like we're all talking about this big change in how we do things, and you talking about how much you've learned and been radicalized now. Do you think you need to pay for film school anymore?
I did film studies at Wesleyan, I just like learning, so like I had a great time. I super enjoyed it.
Learning is great.
Learning is so fun. That doesn't mean it wasn't like a huge privilege to be able to go there. I mean, I really liked it. It is a trade. Film is a trade in some sense. It's a business in some sense, but it is kind of a scholarly art pursuit as well in some sense. And so I feel like I did get a lot of it, but but that was it. I wasn't going to do grad school or anything. I knew I just had to kind of start making things to learn the rest of it.
For me, I also went to film school. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I did learn a lot. I got a lot of exposure to equipment that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Certainly at that time, equipment was more expensive and kind of unattainable than it is now. But even still, I got a lot of experience. But I would say really the thing that was the most valuable part of it was the community that I was a part of and am still a part of. And, we still work with many of the people that, I met back then, and, the connections that I have through those people. I mean, film is not Yeah, the myth of the auteur. I really dispel that, because film is really about a team. You can't just make it with one person. It is about a collection of ideas and skill sets and talents from people. And we wouldn't have been able to make this movie without, even though it was 9 people, it couldn't have been any less than 9 people. We needed all, everyone, and everyone brought so much. And so that aspect of it, I think it is really, really important. The community aspect of film, for sure. But film school is really expensive too. And, it took me a really, really long time to pay off my student loans. So there's that side of it too. So everyone is in their own circumstance, but certainly now, with equipment being so much cheaper, cheaper than it's ever been, making something, in your backyard of a totally professional quality is possible now in a way that it wasn't even 15 years ago. So that's very cool.
Yeah, I think Frank and I would agree. Our community was was so valuable. I'm always like my most expensive friends, and I wouldn't trade you for the world.
And I hold you close because of it.
All right, well, Abby and Ryan, this is the point of the episode where we give out awards for your film. We have 3 of them. Curious to hear your takes on them.
Okay, I've been thinking about them too.
Mm-hmm. Our first award is Best Politics. Goes to the character with the best politics in the film.
Gotta say
Charlie, for sure.
Yeah, Carrie Young's character.
Yes,
she's kind of the shining beacon, I think, amongst a lot of the darkness and mucky muck that a lot of the rest of the characters and the environment sort of are bringing.
And she pushes it maybe too far sometimes, but I always think that's good. It's good to push things too far.
She's not her methods perhaps are a little messy, and all that, but I think her heart and her mind are in the right place.
Yeah, there's a clarity of intention with Charlie.
I loved Carrie Young's performance, and I just for a moment I forgot that Charlie was Kara's character's name. And so I was like, oh, you're giving it to Charlie? I was like, who's that? Because it's clearly Charlie. I was like, you don't know your own movie. There was one line I wanted to shout out because I just loved it so much. I think Charlie says this to Jason. This is what is wrong with all you men. You think your buddies are incapable of being evil when you're literally drowning in the evidence just because you guys high-five one time. It just, you encapsulated so much.
Such a mean line.
It's not even mean, it's just honest.
It's honest, and there's a lot of politics in that line. I just think it's a really...
The alliances that men build, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yes, Charlie. Who are you were gonna offer another name, right, Frank?
No, I was just gonna say you're like runner-up Priya.
For sure, runner-up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Priya.
She like gets past the totally righteous personal grievances that she has with Jason to like do the right thing and help him out without, not too many spoilers.
Yeah.
I would say that a line that we really like from Priya is that she's, I don't want this to end up like another bad apple report, and that this is just about one person within the company.
It's not just Gary.
It's not just Gary, that's kind of like causing this problem. This does,
Comes
this
from the
is
top.
Systemic, within the industry, within this business. And I think that's something we really wanted to hit on. So I'm glad she gets to deliver that line.
All right, our next award is, you guessed it, Worst Politics. Goes to the character with the worst politics in the movie. Oof. I mean,
it's
tough.
Tie maybe between Blake and Gary.
I know, and Gary almost maybe takes it for me because I think he's someone kind of, Blake is a little bit more kind of clear-cut ish evil, he's
and
very,
we can respect that. No,
like respect. He's committed to the bit, but Gary is kind of in this place between Blake and Jason where he knows that something is wrong and he's very willfully ignoring it and putting it down. And I think that's somehow that almost seems a little bit worse to me than Blake, who's kind of, I don't know, just at least committed to some, insane, like nihilistic ideal of,
No, but Blake probably gets it.
I mean, Blake gets it, let's say, but Gary definitely close runner up.
That was my same take as well, where I'm like, Blake, the CEO, he's clearly done more systemic damage than Gary has throughout his life, and has, I'm sure, a very, very, very toxic politics. Although there's like a delusion to him, whereas like you're saying, right? Like Gary's like acknowledging, he's like, I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of shit who does terrible things. And there's like,
and I can handle it. Yeah.
And I can handle it. It's like when you're acknowledging that you're fucking evil and then like owning up to it, that's like a real gross politics.
It's like a manly thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's also like addicted and on those drugs the whole time, right? Like
That's
he's
true.
just, so I don't know, maybe that makes a difference in our tie. I don't know.
They can both have it.
Think about that.
You'll have to
Yeah.
watch, they can both have it, but listeners have to watch the movie and decide for yourself. All right, our last award goes to Best Supporting / Spinoff. This goes to the character that this movie, I'm not going to say should actually be about, because this is your movie, so I'm not going to say that's right, but like that you might, if you were inspired to write another film about, who would you center?
Obviously, Charlie.
Drinking
a Bellican on the beach, plotting her next move.
Yes.
Oh, so you would go straight sequel, like
Straight
how,
sequel.
like, oh, okay. There's a lot of places to go. Like, I want to see the downfall of Forenza. You know, there's so many.
Exactly, and Charlie at the helm of that.
Yeah, we have gotten a lot of Q&A requests for a sequel, a franchise or something with Charlie continuing that story. And so that's always good to hear, because we do think she's a great character, and we'd love to spend more time with her for sure.
I would watch more of like Jason's time at Forenza before he gets fired. Like, because I really thought like you both nailed just like the tech bro, finance bro, corporate bro culture. And I would love to see, I think you could do a great movie just like deconstructing that as a concept in and of itself. Like, where does it come from? Why, like who instills these men with these values? Like, how do we, I would watch more of that.
Cool.
I agree. I love that world, that whole world you created. I could go into more. I'm going to say there's like the smallest scene with the sex worker on camera. And I just love the dialogue there, where she's having to put up with this fucking guy who's like, talk to me like I'm poor. Oh, yeah. You know, like all this. And I just want to know how many fucking, like, I just want a series of those, like, the shit she's seen, you know, and like that kind of like the clients she deals with. I know that there's films like that, but I would love to see you two take a shot at that world.
Ooh, I love that. Thank you.
Love that.
Stealing that for the next one.
Yeah. I mean, even in that scene, she's on her phone while she's giving him, his medicine, so to speak. So we could just cover, I'm sure she's booking her next client, midway through. So we could just jump right in,
Yeah, in the next movie, you two take down OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Just saying that CEO's fucking skimming a lot of money from those sex workers.
I'm sure.
It's really, just for another podcast. Before we wrap up, the last thing we like to do with our guests is discuss how we as artists and people strive to practice our values in our own lives with all of its complexities and contradictions. So is there one thing that you two do in your daily life, whether it's like a practice you engage in, an organization you work with, whatever, where you get a chance to practice your anti-capitalist values?
I was thinking about this. I would say it's probably mostly in my work. My next film is about private equity.
Ooh, that's important. That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah. And a bit of like corporate culture around that and why people stick with it. And so I love reading about that. And I'm excited to create a very darkly funny, fucked up tale of private equity, hopefully in my next movie.
And for me, I guess, yes, also in my work, I definitely try to, focus it that way. And I have a couple new things I'm writing too. But I think that for me, I really want to continue on with this, I guess, methodology of trying to make things sort of a little bit outside the system and off the grid, and giving the people that are working with me equity, and trying to find, you know, again, this whole path of self-distribution is not one that we ever saw ourselves going on. And like, you know, I don't think I ever wanted to know as much as I do know now. This is not my main passion. It's like making the movies, but now that we've been exposed to it, it really seems, I see how important it is to, I think, the longevity of like independent artists making films and making them, you know, again, outside like big money and big corporate interest and things like that. So I definitely want to like continue down that path and find myself working on that stuff every day. So that's how I do it, I guess.
It's amazing.
That's beautiful.
Abby, Ryan, where can folks find the two of you, and where can they watch this GD film?
Well, what a great question.
Yeah.
You can find his GD film called Blow Up My Life. It's out now on demand on Apple, Amazon Prime, and Vimeo On Demand. Vimeo On Demand is the best one to watch it on because we get the biggest splits.
Vimeo is very generous.
Important.
They give the best equity to filmmakers.
And you can find the movie online at blowupmylife.com. You know, we're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. You know, me and Ryan are linked on all those things as well. So
Hit us up.
you know, it's there on the internet for sure.
Amazing. And we'll be sure to link to all of that in the episode description.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you for making this movie, and thank you for reaching out.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
You guys are
An
the
honor to
best.
talk with you.
Yeah,
This is so
thank you.
fun.
Let's all go to the lobby.